We wouldn't even be here today. It would have never came to court.
What do you want us to do? What do you want us to do at this point? What? I'm lost for it. I don't know what to do. I got 5 boys. I don't know what. I ain't got nothing to tell them no more. You can't walk away no more.
Outside the Collin County Courthouse, hundreds of people gathered with one singular mission: to fight for the release of a 19-year-old boy convicted of murder. They weren't there for a name. They were there for a cause. They were there because they believed the system had failed. And as the guilty verdict echoed through those courthouse halls, what happened next on those streets told a story about a community that felt cornered, that felt unheard, and that felt like justice had just walked right past them. April 2nd, 2025, Kukendall Stadium in Frisco, Texas. A track meet was underway. The weather had been threatening all day, and as the afternoon wore on, rain began to fall. The program got delayed. Athletes and coaches scrambled for shelter. Under a tent set up by the Frisco Memorial High School team, roughly 15 kids gathered to stay dry while they waited for the competition to resume. It was supposed to be a routine day, just kids at a track meet. But what happened next under that tent would change everything. A 17-year-old from Frisco Centennial High School, a rival school, wandered under the memorial team's tent. He was asked to leave. Politely at first, then more directly, then repeatedly. 15 times, witnesses would later say he was told to move. 15 times, and 15 times he refused. Each refusal made the air under that tent a little bit tighter, a little bit heavier. A situation that should have been nothing, a kid in the wrong place, became something else entirely because of one simple word: no.
Students testified that Austin Metcalf repeatedly asked Anthony to leave. Several recalled Anthony responding, "Touch me and find out."
A public sporting event, Kukendall Stadium, families in the stands, coaches on the sidelines, twin brothers competing, students cheering. This was supposed to be a place of athletic competition, of school spirit, of young people pushing themselves on the track. A place where the only thing that should be sharp is focus, the only thing that should be dangerous is ambition. Yet somehow, a 17-year-old arrived at this place with a 5-inch folding knife in his backpack. Not borrowed in the moment, not grabbed in panic, brought, carried through the gates of a public venue where hundreds of people, including children, were gathered to watch a track meet. Now here is where it gets interesting. Under Texas law, carrying a folding knife under 5.5 inches is perfectly legal. The officer who testified at trial confirmed it, legal to carry, but against school policy. And that distinction became one of the most debated points of the entire case, because legal or not, the question that nobody could answer was simpler than any law. Why was it there? Witnesses who were under that tent that day said they never expected a knife to be at a track meet. Not one of them. When asked directly on the stand, "Have you ever seen a knife at a track meet?" the answer was the same across the board. No, sir. Not once. Not ever. Because in their world, in that stadium, on that field, a knife had no business being there. It belonged nowhere near that tent, those students, or that rain delay. But it was there. And when the moment came, when words ran out and frustration boiled over, that knife came out of that backpack in a split second. One thrust, one wound, and a 17-year-old boy who had simply asked someone to leave his team's tent would never go home again. Austin Metcalf was 17 years old, an MVP linebacker, a shot put and discus thrower, 6'1", 213 pounds of pure athletic ability, by every account, a leader. The kind of young man his coaches trusted to hold things together when they weren't around. The kind of young man his teammates looked up to. The kind of young man who never backed down. But let's stop right there, because that last part, the never backing down, that's the part that deserves a closer look. See, leadership is a beautiful thing, but leadership without restraint is something else entirely, and we have to ask ourselves, was Austin Metcalf the kind of leader who knew when to walk away? Or was he the kind of leader who felt the weight of every eye on him and couldn't afford to lose? Because there is a difference, a big one. When that stranger refused to leave the tent for the 15th time, Austin had choices. He was the biggest person under that tent. He had coaches within reach. He had authority. So why did he stay in that confrontation? Why did he keep engaging? Why? When he saw a hand disappear into a backpack and heard the words "touch me and find out," did he reach out and make contact anyway? Then Karmelo put his hand into his backpack. He left it there. And looking directly at Austin, he said something that would define everything that followed. "Touch me and find out." That was the moment. Not a physical shove yet, not violence yet, but a clear, deliberate warning. Everyone under that tent understood what it meant. If you touch me, something bad is going to happen. Austin Metcalf heard that warning. He saw that hand disappear into the bag, and instead of walking away, instead of getting a coach, instead of letting it go, he made a choice. He reached out and made contact. Whether it was a push or a shove or just a touch, he crossed the line Karmelo had drawn. In that instant, Karmelo's hand came out of that backpack with the 5-inch folding knife already open. One thrust, straight into Austin's chest. The blade went deep. Witnesses said they heard the sound. They saw Austin's body jolt from the impact. Austin staggered backward. He looked down at his chest. He lifted his shirt and saw the blood. "I think I got stabbed," he said. His voice was confused, shocked, like he still couldn't believe what his own eyes were showing him. He tried to stay on his feet. His body wouldn't cooperate. He fell down the bleachers, hard, onto his back. He lay there gasping, trying to process what had just happened in a single second under a tent at a track meet on a rainy Friday morning. His twin brother Hunter saw it all, saw the blade come out, saw his brother fall, saw the blood. Hunter ran to him. He held him. He called for help. Coaches rushed over. Someone was screaming. The entire tent collapsed into chaos in the span of seconds. Karmelo dropped the knife and ran for the exit. Coaches caught him before he reached the stadium gates. They held him there while paramedics arrived, while an ambulance pulled up to take Austin Metcalf away. While the track meet that was supposed to be ordinary became a crime scene, the paramedics loaded Austin into the ambulance. Hunter rode with him. Jeff and Megan Metcalf, who had come to watch their sons compete, found themselves racing to a hospital instead. The Collin County Chief Medical Examiner would later describe the wound in clinical terms that barely captured the reality of it. Gaping, 2.5 inches in length, the blade had pierced Austin's heart. Not survivable. She testified that even if Austin had been on an operating table at the moment of the stabbing, nothing could have been done. The moment that knife entered his chest, Austin Metcalf was already gone. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. A 17-year-old boy who woke up that morning planning to compete at a track meet did not go home that night.
When something like this happens at a school event, it shakes people to the core. But let's remember that the justice system works best when it moves with steadiness and principle. That's what we're committed to, and that's what this case deserves.
Was that bravery, or was it pride? Was it leadership, or was it the pressure of 20 sets of eyes watching to see what the linebacker would do? We want to know. And we think you do too. So tell us in the comments, do you think Austin Metcalf could have walked away? Should he have? And if he had, would any of this have happened? Karmelo Anthony was 17 years old, a 3.7 grade point average, captain of both the football and track teams at Frisco Centennial High School. The oldest of 4 children, he worked 2 part-time jobs, Foot Locker for 2 years, and then HEB, because his family had moved to North Texas 3 years earlier searching for a better life, and he wanted to help. He was on track to graduate in 1 month. 1 month away from walking across that stage. By every measurable standard, Karmelo Anthony was doing exactly what you are supposed to do at 17. He was excelling in school. He was leading his teams. He was working. He was helping his family. He had never been arrested. He had no criminal record. The only incident anyone could point to was something that happened in February, and a SOL that Frisco ISD handled internally, the details of which was never made public. One incident in his entire life that we don't even know what it was. Now ask yourself something. Frisco, Texas is not a dangerous place. The violent crime rate there is below the national average. It is 3.86 times lower than Texas. It is a master-planned community with private security, gated parks, and cameras in the alleys. People move there to raise their children safely. It is, by every statistical measure, one of the safest suburbs in the Dallas area. So why was Karmelo Anthony carrying a 5-inch folding knife to a track meet in that community? This is the question nobody asked. This is the question that matters, because the answer tells you everything about his state of mind that morning. Was he a violent person? No. Was he known for carrying weapons? No record of it. Was he someone who had ever been in serious trouble before? No. So why the knife? Did something happen that morning that made him feel like he needed protection? Did he go to that track meet that day already afraid? Or did he pick that knife up casually? The way some teenagers carry things without thinking, without any expectation that he would ever use it. His mother said in her statement that he was raised in a 2-parent home with structure, stability, and God first. She said he deserved the same rights under the law as everyone else. She said he was sorry for what happened.
I don't know why we are being targeted and discriminated against before a fair trial. Our son deserves the same rights under the law that everyone is afforded to. He's been raised in a 2-parent home with structure, stability, love, and we put God first in everything that we do.
But here is what nobody can answer for certain. If Karmelo Anthony had simply walked away from that tent when he was asked to leave, if he had chosen to leave instead of refusing 15 times, would Austin Metcalf still be alive? Would he have graduated that year? Would he have been an uncle to Hunter's kids? The answer is almost certainly yes. Frisco police were already working the scene. Karmelo Anthony was in custody. The knife had been recovered. Detective Bo Riley from the Crimes Against Children unit set up in the field house near the football field and began taking statements. He reviewed student cell phones, camera rolls, text messages, Snapchat accounts. Over the weeks that followed, investigators interviewed more than 75 people, every student who had been under that tent, every coach who had been nearby, every witness who had seen or heard anything in those 2 minutes. 2 days after the stabbing on April 4th, the Frisco Police Department released a police report. Witness statements included Karmelo's own account documented his admission to the stabbing, his claim of self-defense. The Frisco community woke up to that news struggling to make sense of it. Murder didn't happen here, not at school events, not in this master-plan suburb where the violent crime rate sat nearly 4 times below the Texas average. Yet it had happened. In their stadium, on their field, to their kids. 2 weeks passed. Karmelo Anthony sat in custody. The Anthony family decided they could no longer stay silent. They called a press conference through the Next Generation Action Network, a civil rights organization that had taken up their cause. Dominique Alexander opened the event calling for peace, but it was what came after that the world was waiting for. Kayla Hayes, Karmelo's mother, stepped to the microphone. She was composed, determined.
Good afternoon. My name is Kayla Hayes. I am the mother of Karmelo Anthony. 3 years ago, my family moved to North Texas searching for a better life. Like so many other families, we wanted to give our children the future we did not have. My husband works hard every single day to provide for us, to make sure we're in the best financial position possible. As a stay-at-home mom, I made it my life's mission to ensure our children are loved, nurtured, and supported every step of the way. In wake of this tragic incident, our family has been under attack. Whatever you think what happened between Karmelo and the Metcalf boys, my 3 younger children, my husband, and I didn't do anything to deserve to be threatened, harassed, and lied about. The lies and false accusations that have been said about us, especially over the past week, has been overwhelming. The lies and their amplification put my family in danger, as well as everyone in our community, everyone involved in the investigation, from the police, the attorneys, and the court staff. Our address and my husband's previous employer's address has been put on all social media platforms. My husband had to take a leave of absence because he's afraid what may happen to our family. His mental health is deteriorating day by day. We have endured death threats. My 13-year-old daughter is afraid to sleep in her own bedroom because she's fearful of what might happen to her. And let me be clear, the claims that were used about the public donation to buy a home or anything else are completely false. We have not received a single dime from the Give, Send, Go fundraiser. And the co-founder has stated that clearly. In the reality, we were just notified yesterday that we could begin to withdraw funds. And it still takes several days to receive those funds once a request is made. I don't know why we are being targeted and discriminated against before a fair trial.
It got worse, vicious. Coordinated rumors were spreading across social media, claiming the family had used a GoFundMe fundraiser to buy a house, to buy a car, to enrich themselves off of tragedy. All of it false. Every word of it designed to paint them as people profiting from death. Kayla Hayes stood before those cameras and said plainly that her family had not received a single dollar from the fundraiser yet. The co-founder of the platform confirmed it. Then Andrew Anthony, Karmelo's father, stepped forward, a man whose oldest son faced a murder charge while his family was being hunted online.
Y'all, I'm going to show something up of a post. You come for me, I come for you. Sarah Fields. Never heard of this woman. This is the kind of despicable things that led to the father being here. Political operatives motivating this family with hate. Karmelo Anthony posted on something.
As the Anthony family was speaking, Jeff Metcalf, Austin's father, showed up at the press conference unexpectedly. The event was paused. Tensions erupted. Dominique Alexander later said Metcalf's presence was disrespectful. Metcalf said he came because he thought it might be an opportunity for both families to come together. It was not. The divide between them was already too wide. The battle lines had already been drawn in ways that neither family could control. On June 24, 2025, nearly 3 months after Austin's death, a Collin County grand jury indicted Karmelo Anthony for first-degree murder. The case would go to trial. A date was set, June 1, 2026, over a year away. In the meantime, Karmelo's bond was reduced from $1 million to $250,000, with the judge citing his clean criminal record and his academic and athletic achievements. He was released on house arrest with an ankle monitor, required to check in with the court every Friday, and prohibited from using social media or contacting the Metcalf family. The wait began. For both families. For the community. For a nation that had already made up its mind and was now being asked to wait for a courtroom to catch up. By June 1, 2026, the Collin County Courthouse in McKinney had become the center of a storm that had been building for over a year. The case had consumed the national consciousness. Social media had turned it into a referendum on race, on self-defense, on justice itself. Both families had been threatened, harassed, doxxed. The nation was watching. Now it was time for 12 jurors to decide what the facts actually meant. The jury pool started with nearly 600 people. Attorneys from both sides questioned them extensively about race, about self-defense, about whether they could be fair. The defense was trying to find jurors who could set aside everything they had seen online. The prosecution was trying to find jurors who would convict. Then it happened. The prosecution used their peremptory challenges to remove 3 black female jurors from the pool. Every single black juror who had made it to the strike zone was gone. The defense immediately raised a Batson challenge, arguing the prosecution was striking jurors based on race, which is unconstitutional. The prosecution responded that the women were struck because they were educators, and this case involved school-aged children. Judge John Roach sided with the prosecution. The challenge was denied, but the detail that cut deepest was this. One juror who was ultimately seated was also an educator. She was not black. She stayed. The 3 black female educators were gone. The defense pointed this out. The judge disagreed. The result was a jury with 0 black members. In a case where the defendant was black and the victim was white. In a case that had already divided the country along racial lines. The composition of that jury became just as talked about as the verdict itself. Was the jury racist? Nobody can answer that with certainty. But the optics of that jury in that case in that moment sent a message that no verdict could fully undo. Opening statements began on June 4th. District Attorney Bill Werski was direct and surgical. He told the jury this was a provoked, unjustified murder. That Karmelo Anthony had come to that track, meet with a knife, refused to leave when asked, escalated a situation that never needed to escalate, and used lethal force against a boy who was simply asking him to move. He said self-defense requires a reasonable fear of imminent harm, and being asked to leave a tent does not create that fear. Defense attorney Michael Howard told the jury there were varying accounts of what happened under that tent. That Karmelo was seated when he was confronted, that Austin made first contact, that Karmelo reacted in a split second of fear and chaos as the group closed in around him. He argued self-defense. The trial lasted 5 days. The prosecution called 21 witnesses, the defense called 6. Let that land for a second. 21 witnesses against 6. In a murder trial where a GoFundMe had raised nearly $700,000 for the defense. Legal observers watching the case openly questioned where that money went, because what played out in that courtroom did not look like a well-funded, well-prepared defense. Student after student took the stand for the prosecution. They described the 15 refusals. They described the hand in the backpack. They described the warning. They described Austin's push as minimal, soft, barely enough to count as physical contact. They described the knife appearing. They described the blood. They described Austin lifting his shirt and saying, "I think I got stabbed." Every single one of them, including the defense's own witnesses, said Karmelo was the aggressor. Every single one said this was not self-defense. The medical examiner testified about the wound. 2.5 inches. The blade had pierced Austin's heart, not survivable. Several jurors visibly reacted, covering their mouths, fighting back tears. Austin's family left the courtroom rather than hear the clinical details of how their son had died. The prosecution handled the defense's witnesses with precision. Every time the defense called a student and tried to introduce a version of events that supported Karmelo, the prosecution came back in cross-examination and dismantled it. They pointed out inconsistencies. They showed video evidence that contradicted what witnesses were saying. They ended almost every cross-examination the same way. Who was the aggressor? Karmelo. Who provoked this? Karmelo. Was this self-defense? No, sir. But the single most revealing moment of the entire defense did not come from a witness. It came from the defense attorney himself. He stood up in open court and told the judge that he had spoken to one of his own witnesses for exactly 2 minutes in the hallway before putting him on the stand. 2 minutes. In a murder trial, his own witness. The prosecution had spoken to that same witness longer. They had texted his father the night before. They knew exactly what he was going to say. The defense did not. So when that witness contradicted the defense's own narrative on the stand, there was nothing they could do. They were blindsided in front of the jury by a witness they called themselves. It was a moment that said everything about how this defense was run. The defense's closing argument leaned on sudden passion, a Texas legal doctrine that could have reduced Karmelo's sentence to between 2 and 20 years if the jury found it applied. They argued fear. They argued that in the heat of that moment, when Austin made contact, Karmelo reacted out of genuine terror rather than calculated intent to kill. It was their strongest argument. It was also the argument they had spent 5 days undermining, because every witness who testified, including their own, had described Austin's physical contact as minimal. You cannot successfully argue sudden passion when your own witnesses are telling the jury the provocation was barely enough to count as a shove. Through all 5 days, Karmelo Anthony sat at the defense table, stoic for most of it, taking notes at times, watching, listening. His composure, while understandable, may have worked against him, because juries watch defendants. They read body language. They look for remorse, for humanity, for some sign that this person understands the weight of what they did. What they saw from Karmelo Anthony for most of those 5 days was a young man who appeared almost detached from the gravity of it all. It was only when the verdict was read that everything broke open. On June 9, 2026, at 1:35 in the afternoon, the jury returned. The courtroom went silent. The judge called for order. The verdict form was handed over. Guilty of murder, not manslaughter, not sudden passion. Murder, first-degree murder. The harshest verdict available to that jury. Karmelo Anthony's composure shattered instantly. He wept. His mother sobbed behind him. His attorney pulled him close. The young man who had sat through 5 days of testimony without visible emotion was suddenly exactly what he was, a 19-year-old boy whose life had just been taken from him in a different way than the life he had taken from Austin Metcalf. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted. A woman fell to her knees the moment the verdict was announced. People were crying, screaming, live-streaming their grief and rage in real time. One man captured what much of the crowd was feeling in 2 sentences that stopped everything cold. If we take up for ourselves, we go to jail. If we don't, we die. So it's a catch-22. What do you want us to do? The sentencing phase began almost immediately. The defense chose to have the jury determine the sentence rather than the judge, banking on individual jurors showing more mercy than a notoriously tough judge who had seen everything. But then the defense called just one witness. Karmelo's mother, Kayla Hayes, took the stand and did what any mother would do. She begged. She told the jury he was her firstborn. She told them he was very sorry for what he had done. The prosecution asked her one question on cross-examination that landed like a stone in still water. Regardless of what happens, you realize he will still get to be part of your life. She said yes. Sitting in that courtroom was a family who could never say the same thing. Austin Metcalf's mother would not be visiting her son. She would be visiting a grave. The jury deliberated for 2 hours and 20 minutes. They came back with 35 years. They rejected sudden passion entirely. 35 years for a 19-year-old boy who would have to serve at least half of that, 17 and a half years, before he would even be eligible for parole. 17 and a half years, the exact age Austin Metcalf was when he died. The victim impact statements that followed were the emotional heart of everything. Megan Metcalf spoke first. She had been under a gag order for over a year. Unable to speak publicly about her son, unable to respond to the misinformation, unable to defend Austin's memory against the people who had tried to paint him as a bully and a villain online. Now she finally had her voice back. She used it quietly and devastatingly. She talked about a house that used to be filled with the laughter of 2 boys, now filled with silence. She talked about conversations that were now one-sided because she was having them at a graveside. She talked about the morning of April 2nd, the breakfast she made, the snacks she packed, the bear hug Austin gave her before he left for a track meet he would never come home from. She looked directly at Karmelo Anthony and said, "You have been given a sentence of 35 years. You should feel lucky. I have been sentenced to a lifetime without my son." Jeff Metcalf came next. Where Megan was quiet devastation, Jeff was raw, unfiltered grief that had nowhere left to go. He had photos of Austin playing behind him on a screen, years of a life, many of the images with Hunter. He talked about watching his son grow up. He talked about believing Austin had a great career ahead of him. He pounded the podium. He said we were robbed. He told Karmelo Anthony to look at him. He said this was never about race. It was about right and wrong. He said Austin's death did not just break his heart. It destroyed the person he used to be. He said he would never be that person again. Then Hunter Metcalf took the stand, Austin's twin, the other half of something that could never be made whole. He asked Karmelo Anthony to look at him while he spoke. Anthony kept his head down, unable to meet the eyes of the boy, whose face was the mirror image of the boy he had killed. Hunter said, "You still have air while my brother is 6 feet under." He said, "You took a son, a brother, a friend, my best friend from this world. You took someone who was supposed to be an uncle to my kids." The courtroom held a silence when Hunter finished that no words could fill. Karmelo Anthony was escorted out and remanded into the custody of the Collin County Sheriff. Within days, he was transferred to the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. He filed a notice of appeal. He began serving 35 years for a moment that lasted seconds. Outside the courthouse, Dominique Alexander stepped to the microphone. "Black lives do not matter in Collin County," he said. The Next Generation Action Network announced $10,000 toward an appeal attorney. They would fight Collin County like hell. Collin County District Attorney Greg Willis held his own press conference with the Metcalf family standing.
All right. Everybody ready?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening. I'm Greg Willis, Collin County District Attorney. Today, justice was served. A year ago, when this senseless murder unfolded, I said that it had struck a deep nerve in Collin County and far beyond. I asked our community to ignore all the noise and instead be level-headed and patient as the process worked. And today, the process delivered accountability. We are grateful to this jury, and we are grateful that the good citizens of Collin County had an opportunity to weigh in on this case. I'm proud of the exceptional work of Bill Werski and our team of prosecutors, DA investigators, and victim advocates, and all the good and outstanding men and women of the Collin County District Attorney's Office. We thank all the parents and their brave kids who did the right thing. Despite the trauma of witnessing the senseless murder at a school track meet, they cooperated fully and testified truthfully. Their courage was essential to securing justice in this case. I'm especially honored to be joined here today by Jeff and Megan Metcalf and their son Hunter. Their strength and grace through this has been their strength and grace throughout this unimaginable journey has been inspiring. They won't be taking questions at this time, but their presence here speaks volumes about their commitment to seeking justice for Austin.
The Metcalf family stood there silently. They did not take questions. Their presence said everything that still needed to be said. The trial was over. The verdict was in. The sentence had been handed down. But the questions this case raised about race, about justice, about the system, about parenting, about the choices young people make, and the environments that shape those choices, those questions would outlast the verdict by decades. Because at the end of everything, two families lost their sons, one to a knife, one to a prison cell. Two boys who should have been finishing their senior year, walking across a stage, planning futures that stretched as far as they could imagine. Instead, one was in the ground and one was in a cell, and somewhere between those two realities sits the only question that truly matters. Could any of this have been avoided?